tidbits before we start. First off, we are attempting something new today. Because of the huge interest in this topic, we have a video camera going in the back of the room. We're going to try to record this and post it to a YouTube channel or the website for residents who aren't in town to see DJ's presentation. Gene made it. Come on in, Gene. Because of that, and because of DJ's time and him being so gracious, what I'm going to ask is that you hold your questions till the end of his presentation, and then during the question and answer session for DJ, let's keep it reserve specific, and we'll let DJ in, and then we can turn off the recording, and then we can have any open questions about the association or any other concerns that you guys may have. But I don't want to hold DJ up. He's got a lot of other things going on. This is a very busy time in the reserve world. So I want to thank you so much, DJ, for coming, and if you guys will welcome him home. Thank you. Wherever you're more comfortable.
I'll stay here. You're okay? Yeah, I'm not sure about the back. So I'll try to. Did you say something?
I got a noise from downstairs, so if you can speak a little.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, my name is DJ Flaming. I'm president and co-owner of Association Reserves Arizona. I've been working with the Toscana Reserve Study for a long time now. And what I'm going to do is start off with some reserve study basics, just to give you an idea of some of the concepts and how things are figured, and then at the end we'll go through some of your questions. So, has everybody here seen the reserve study, or you know what the reserve study is? Okay. No? Alright, so for some of you this might be like a crash course, for some of you this might be just a refresher. But basically, a reserve study is a planning document and a budgeting model. Its purpose is to help associations prepare for significant irregular expenses over time while minimizing or avoiding surprises and special assessments. And I say irregular because we're talking about expenses that aren't occurring every year. If it's something that's happening every year, that should be part of your anticipated operating or maintenance budget. So having a reserve study is important because asset deterioration and the expenses that come from that deterioration are inevitable. Right? We don't want your clubhouse to look like this someday, right? So having a reserve study is important because it helps you avoid being surprised by an expense that was gradually approaching over the last 10 or 20 years. So the only question is, how prepared will you be? So let's talk about some other reasons that encourage regular reserve planning. Governing documents. Your CC&Rs, your governing documents, typically empower and require the board to collect funds that will adequately provide for major common area repair and replacement expenses. State laws. In working with clients across the country, we found that there's about 30 states now that have laws requiring some level or frequency of reserve studies. Does anybody know if Arizona is one of those 30 states?
It is not.
It is not. Does that mean you don't need a reserve study?
No.
Right. The board has a fiduciary duty to the membership. And I would argue that if you're not planning and looking forward to these large expenses that are going to happen, the board wouldn't be upholding its duty. I'm not making any claims because Toscana's been very proactive in keeping the reserve study up to date. Generally accepted accounting principles, often referred to as GAAP. These are standard accounting practices across all 50 states. They call for associations to annually balance the physical deterioration of their common areas with a sufficient amount of cash to ensure the association is on track to repair and replace its assets. And then finally, there's a fundamental practical need for information. The board and management need a periodic status update as to the association's major upcoming expenses and its ability to pay for them. So while reserve studies can be overwhelming if you've looked at one, they can be anywhere from 10 to well over 100 pages. But all that information really boils down to just 3 key results. The first result is a list of what you're saving for, what you're reserving for. This is the component list. And this is the foundation of your reserve study. The second key result is a measurement of reserve fund strength, which we call percent funded. And the third result is a recommendation of how to plan or address the expenses on the component list. This is your funding plan. So the first 2 results establish where you are now. The third is a recommendation of where do you go from here. So when you're reviewing the study, make sure you can identify those 3 key results. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you some key pages from your actual study to show you where you find this information. So what we're going to do is review those 3 key results in a little bit more detail into it. We're going to start with the component list. As I said, the component list forms the foundation of your reserve study. All the other results of the reserve study are calculated based on the component list. So it's important that it be current and credible. How do we get a credible component list? Remember, your reserves are not going to account for every single expense the association can or will face. The National Reserve Study Standards have identified a 4-part test to help determine whether or not an asset or an expense is appropriate for reserve designation. Are you guys still hearing me okay?
Yes.
So first and foremost, any asset or expense we're considering for reserves must be a common area maintenance responsibility of the association. We don't want to be funding for things that the association is not responsible for. That's typically pretty clear cut. Component in question must have a limited life expectancy. We're not going to be budgeting for assets that have an extended or indefinite lifespan. Like, we're not going to be planning to replace your clubhouse or your condominium buildings. The expectation is if they're properly maintained, you will not have to replace them. Any asset in question must have a reasonably predictable remaining life. And I would extend that to say scope of work and cost, because we have to be able to reasonably anticipate when something's going to happen, how much it's going to cost in order to incorporate it into the funding plan. So predictability or unpredictability is a big reason why some assets are not funded in the reserves. And finally, any asset in question must have a cost that's above a minimum threshold level that is set. Okay, it's inappropriate to bog down the reserve budget with a lot of insignificant expenses. So that threshold is custom for every community, and it's going to be impacted by factors such as community size and budget flexibility. We typically look to the board of management to help determine what's an appropriate threshold for your community. Most of our clients have a threshold in the range of $1,000 to $3,000. Does anybody know what the threshold is in the Toscana study? It's $1,000. But to give you an idea of how this works, let's just say it's $2,000. And you're going to go down that component list, and you should not find anything under $2,000 budget. And I'd like to give an example of a pool filter. If you have this regular pool filter, it costs less than $2,000 to replace. When you replace it, it's not going to be on that component list because in this instance, it's considered insignificant. We would expect it to be replaced as part of the maintenance budget or somewhere in the operating budget, however you would account for it in respect. So here's a sample component list. You know, from the distance, you probably can't see much of it, but you have this in your study. And basically, this is the culmination of what we call the physical analysis of the reserve study. This is where all the assets being funded in reserves are identified. They're quantified. Every fund component has a useful life estimate, a remaining life estimate, and a cost estimate. So once this is all compiled, we're able to take that information and move on to the financial analysis section of the report. And that's where the next step comes in, calculating your reserve fund strength. Fortunately, this is a pretty simple concept to illustrate. And I've eliminated the effects of inflation to keep the illustration simple. But basically, the question is, how much should you have in a reserve fund to prepare for this recurring expense? The example is a $10,000 expense that's occurring every 10 years. Any guesses? It's a trick question. The answer is it depends. It depends which year you're in. Because in the years approaching the actual expense, your reserve fund should be growing closer to the estimated cost. When you complete the project, you start the cycle of saving all over again. So it's a matter of having the amount of funds on hand equivalent to the asset's deterioration. So if you're halfway through the life expectancy of an asset, you should have saved half of its replacement value. That means you're on pace to replace it. So this concept is called the fully funded balance. The fully funded balance is defined as the fractional age of a component multiplied funded balance total for the association. So here's another sample table. It's a little bit larger. You can see where the various lifespans, remaining lifespans, and current costs worked out to a fully funded balance calculation. For this set of reserve components, with all its different lives and remaining lives and ages and costs, it's determined that this association should have about $154,000 in its reserve fund. So the second component, you have a 10-year life, 5 years remaining, with a current cost of $10,000. That really fits right into the illustration I was showing. The fully funded balance is $5,000. That just reflects how much you should have saved toward that component at this point in time. The fully funded balance does not reflect the total replacement value of your assets. And I find that's a common point of confusion, right? It just represents the deteriorated value. So percent funded is our reserve fund strength indicator. It measures how well reserve funds match the association's needs. Like the fully funded balance calculation, percent funded is a very simple mathematical equation. It's just a ratio of what you actually have in your reserve fund to that fully funded benchmark balance we just talked about calculating. Basically what you have versus what you should have to be fully funded. So we've divided percent funded as a measure of reserve fund strength into 3 ranges or categories. This lower area, the 0 to 30% funded range, is considered a weak financial position because associations in this range have a high risk of special assessments and deferred maintenance. When your reserves are 70% funded and above, that's considered a strong financial position because special assessment risk is low and special assessments are rare. Now the middle area between 30 and 70% funded is considered fair. You know, special assessment risk is more moderate, but it's like a sliding scale. I mean, the closer you are to 30%, the higher your risk. The closer you are to 70%, the lower your risk.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
Would you ever go above 100?
It does go above 100 once in a while because the fully funded balance, how that's calculated, it's a moving target.
But I mean on purpose.
Not, you wouldn't try to. But you know, sometimes it'll go to 105 and it drops down to 98. So, like I said, it's a moving target, so it's not necessarily linear where once you hit 100%, it just stays. But like if you start out at 130% funded, if we try to create a plan that would slowly reduce that down, so you're lowering that surplus over time. I wouldn't get into any kind of drastic measures unless you were significantly low.
It becomes a fiduciary issue for the board when you're overfunded, because you have to explain to the contingency why you're not dropping assessments when you have all this
I asked a
money.
question.
Yeah, so you've got to be very careful how you take that step.
So here's where you can see why we have those ranges or categories of percent funded. In that 0 to 30% funded range, special assessment risk is pretty high. As an average for that category, special assessment risk is 37%. What that means is that any time an association is in that range, you have a better than 1 in 3 chance of needing a special assessment that year due to a lack of sufficient reserve funds. At the other end of the spectrum, you can see that reserves over 70% funded are very strong and special assessments are rare. And then you have a sliding scale here in the middle range. So here's a national profile compiled from about 25,000 different reserve studies we have prepared over the years. And it shows you the range of percent funded amongst all these different associations. You can see that most associations are here in this middle range, but there are plenty of others both in the red weak range and in the green strong range. So it's a mistake to think that all associations are poorly funded and that no association could ever afford to be well funded. The entire spectrum doesn't exist. Does anybody know where Toscana fits on this spectrum? 55? Pretty close. 53% funded, so you're right in the middle. Is that bad? Not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But you wouldn't want to focus on percent funded as the only indicator of reserve health. Kind of look at what's the percent funded, what's your contribution rate, and what's the overall picture. So that in itself is decent, but we also want to look at your contributions. And you guys have a healthy reserve contribution, so the overall plan is good. Yes.
Is it safe to say that because of the age of the community, the percentage would actually be increased as the aging increases? For example, Toscana is old now.
It's
10 to 12 years, you know, which are we talking about?
So if we're going to be, that age increases, that percentage increases as well because of maintenance and work replacement and stuff like that's going to increase as well.
Well, it's not necessarily tied to the age of the community, it's more just a measurement of here's where you're at now, but the long-term goal is to build up, so as these bigger expenses are coming due, your reserves are stronger.
You know what I'm saying, though, age contributes to
Longevity of assets.
all that good stuff. It's all really all tied together.
Right. Plus, the assets get older,
Yes.
then the fully funded balance is increasing. So, as we're trying to achieve that fully funded balance level, we are increasing and strengthening the reserves over time.
Well, and realistically, we just saw that when we made a decision to replace all the carpet at once. So the other piece in this, I would think, is when the various asset classes come up, because not everything breaks in the same year, or at the same time. But if, God forbid, we gotta replace elevators in here, the odds are, especially if you're still with the current control community, we go out and get the best bargain on elevator replacement, we may end up with a whole bunch of elevators being replaced at the same time. I just made that up, it's hypothetical.
Right.
But
Okay, so that's the reserve fund strength. And the final result is the funding plan. Let's take a few minutes and look at that. When we're creating a funding plan, National Reserve Study Standards outlines 4 criteria we have to keep in mind or put into place when we're creating the plan. So first and foremost, any plan we create must provide sufficient cash to meet the association's needs. The plan must have a stable contribution rate, meaning it's not fluctuating up and down every year. The plan must be evenly distributed across the ownership base. That means it's fair to both current and future owners. And finally, the plan must be fiscally safe and responsible. So while I'm on the topic of funding plans, I want to take a moment to talk about the reserve funding objective. The funding objective is more important than the funding method. If you guys have been around reserve studies for a while, you may have heard, there used to be a lot of debate and discussion about cash flow method, straight line method, things like that. Those are just tools to get to our objective. So we're going to focus on objectives. So how strong do you want your reserves to be? How tolerant is your association of special assessment risk? So National Reserve Study Standards clearly defines 3 funding objectives. Full funding is the most conservative objective. So which should you choose? Full funding is the most conservative objective, with the goal to reach and remain at about 100% funding. Baseline funding is the opposite extreme, where the goal is just to barely remain cash positive for the years. Threshold funding is a strategic choice for a particular percent funded target somewhere between that full funding and baseline funding objectives. So this is an illustration of a full funding plan on a percent funded graph. In this illustration, the association is about 55% funded, but has the long-term goal to achieve and remain at about 100% funded. So you can see when following this plan, the association never falls into the high-risk weak range. Now, the most common criticism of a full funding plan is that it's too aggressive, assesses the ownership too much. What I'd like to point out as somebody that puts together these plans is I don't have an arbitrary timeline in mind. Like, I'm not trying to create a plan that's so aggressive to get from 55% funded to 100% funded within 5 years. You can see this is 20, 21 years till it actually hits that goal. I want to see a nice long-term uptrend that eventually achieves that goal at some point in the 30-year projection. So in that respect, I don't think it is overly aggressive. Yes?
historically, in your efforts, have you recommend like a minimum percent, maybe 1% every year, the reserves go up or something like that?
Well, if you look at this graph here, like I said, it's going to fluctuate up and down. So here it's going up, you have a big expense, it drops down. So it's not a matter of incrementally every year going up 1%, because it's going to go up, it's going to go down. It's over the long term that it about being older. I mean, you can be a brand new community and you're 100% funded because maybe your assets are only 1 year old and you've saved the equivalent of 1 year's deterioration. Now, as the property gets older, it is a little bit more important to try and build up to that range because you are going to be experiencing a lot more expenses and a lot more significant expenses. So being at 100% funded provides more margin or safety net in case, for example, the elevators fail sooner. Right? If you're at 50% funded and things are failing sooner and now you're experiencing large expenses, you may not have that margin or safety net to incur the expense. So it's kind of a way of self-insuring a little bit.
And keep in mind too that when you're talking about our fully funded over 30 years and the age of the community is why we're doing things every year, is to try to do things before you incur major costs, preventative maintenance, the upkeep and everything like that, to try to prevent us from dipping into that and hurting our future funding.
Right, preventive maintenance are great because then we expect, or that helps the assets achieve the anticipated lifespan. So some of these things, like elevators, pumps, and mechanicals, if you just neglect them and don't do anything, well, they're not going to last as long as it is projected.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Since I'm neither an accountant or in reserves, I have a basic question. I don't understand, so you take a widget, you spend $10,000, worth $10,000 at the beginning. Do you change the value as that thing goes along? Let's say it's worth $20,000 10 years from now, its life expectancy is up. Where's the other $10,000 coming from?
Well, the illustration I showed you is simplified without inflation. So the reserve study does have an inflation factor built in. So when we're projecting the cash flow and the funding plan over time, it is accounting for increasing costs. And then when we do update the study, we go through and look at the costs and maybe things have increased beyond inflation, or maybe things haven't increased as much. So we go through and fine tune the costs as best we can. But yeah, it does account for costs going up. Okay, so this illustration is showing a baseline funding plan. It's the same data I showed you for the full funding plan, but we've slightly reduced the reserve contribution rate to illustrate this option. So you got to keep in mind that even a baseline funding plan is still supposed to develop and provide enough funds so that reserve projects can be completed on time. So don't make the mistake in thinking that reserve contributions can be significantly decreased by pursuing this objective. However, even though it's designed to never go below zero, notice there's about 9 years in there where it falls into that weak high-risk range. So if you recall from our discussion on percent funded, anytime an association is in this range, they have a better than 1 in 3 chance of needing a special assessment. There's a good chance this association is going to experience about 3 special assessments during this time frame. So what we found is that on average, reserve contributions required for a full funding objective are about 10 to 15% higher than a baseline funding objective. It doesn't take 2 or 3 times the contribution rate to pursue full funding, as many might believe. Like I said, it still takes some pretty significant contributions to pursue baseline funding. Problem is, when you run into communities that are already poorly funded, they're not contributing enough to achieve baseline funding. So then when they're faced with trying to come up with a plan that's a little more significant, that builds them up into the future toward better funding, they just feel like they can't afford it. All right. So I want to point out some of the key pages. I know this might be hard to see, but this is the executive summary page from your reserve study. So the first result of the reserve study is the component list. I don't have it illustrated here, but it's in a table just on the next page right after this. That's your first table, and then there's various other tables throughout the report with that component list showing different information. Result number 2 was a measurement of reserve fund strength, or percent funded. And that's right here in the middle of the page. Shows 53% funded. There's also this little infographic to show you where you're at on that funding spectrum. Result number 3 is the funding plan, or the recommendation. So that's shown right here. There's how much we're saying you should be contributing to your reserves for this coming 2019 fiscal year. It's also listed down here in one of the bullet points. So all this information is really contained right toward the front of the report in the executive summary, but it's also spread throughout the report. The Anybody familiar with this table? Have you guys seen this?
Yeah,
This is a 30-year reserve plan summary. I really like this table. It provides kind of in a nutshell everything, all the results of the study. You can see where we're starting out in 2019, the projected starting balance, calculated fully funded balance, percent funded. The other thing right here is the recommended contributions. As we just talked about, the reserve study does incorporate an inflation factor. We are anticipating costs are going up, because they do. So at the same time, the contribution rate is going up. Now, we don't want to look too far out in the future because it looks kind of scary. But we do need to be increasing our contributions to reserves, one, to offset the effects of inflation with costs going up, and two, we're also reducing that funding deficit over time. That's where we're trying to build from 53% funded to 100% funded over the long term. And you can see in this plan, we're at 53% funded here. You can follow along. All these results are based on the assumption that the recommendation is followed. It's also based on the assumption that these expenses are being incurred and assets are being renewed as scheduled, because that all plays a factor into calculating the fully funded balance for the subsequent years. So when you're planning your budgets and you're looking forward, this is a great table to look at, just to kind of get a feel for what should we be doing this coming year. Like, if you don't update this study for 3 years, you're looking at 2021, what was the anticipated contribution? It's not going to be the same as what it was for 2019. And also, you can look here. Here's the scheduled reserve expenses. We have X number of dollars planned for that year. So then you can go to the next table. And this is a 30-year breakdown of all the different components. So for any given year, you can say, okay, 2021, we have, I can't see the numbers, $600,000 in expenses. What makes up that $600,000? We can go down this list and say, okay, that's scheduled, that's scheduled. And when you're trying to plan in advance, it's a good way to look forward as what the major projects are. And if it's roofing or elevators or something real significant, you want to get a jump start and getting vendors out to look at it and determine, do we really need to do this now? Can it be put off? Is there some kind of maintenance we need to do to delay it? So it's a good way to start planning ahead. I find that managers and board members will also use this table to make notes. Like if a project was replaced, they'll know that it was replaced and when. Sometimes the project's being delayed, so they'll write that on there, or projects were replaced ahead of schedule, so they know that something was accelerated. So it's a great worksheet to look at and try to plan for. This last section of the report is our component. Yes.
Is that component list fixed? I mean, you wouldn't change that over time, right? That's pretty much the same over the.
It does change, but for the most part, it is fixed. But it does change as assets are added to the community, and maybe over time there's different things that we start funding for that we didn't fund in the past. But the base component should remain pretty stable.
How often does Toscana review the plan?
Well, there's been so many changes lately that it's been annual, but I think in the past it's been about every 3 years.
Where's this money invested?
I don't know.
Oh, I'll get into that. Oh, yeah.
Has Toscana ever had a special assessment?
And you won't while you have a developer. It's a developer responsibility to take care of any shortfall. So the developer will take care of it before we have a special assessment anyway. We're preparing for the future of the developer.
Let's have the elevators break down before.
They gotta break before they're gone. Let's not talk about the elevators anymore. No more jinxing of the elevators.
Sorry.
I keep telling you to stop using the elevators as an example.
But see, that's a good, interesting example, because if the elevators went to 2 suppliers of elevators in the United States, the odds are you might want to make a deal and get more elevators. Because we did that with the roll-up gates. We replaced all 4 roll-up gates at the same time,
But the cost is different.
because we got a good deal.
And being well funded helps you to be able to do that because you have that margin to maybe incur an expense that wasn't quite scheduled yet. But yeah, that's the mobilization cost is lower. location, if you're not sure where something is at. It has specifics about where it's located. It's got a history about when it was installed or if it's been replaced already, the date it was replaced and how much you paid for it. When we do an on-site update, this will also include additional commentary as far as conditions or things we saw on the property and pictures. So this is what it looks like this year because we weren't out here, so there's no pictures included. But if you have questions about a specific component, this is where you want to look. This should, most of the time, have the answers you're looking for.
Also, this helps with continuity. If Nicole wins the lottery next week and waves bye-bye, you've got all kinds of notes in here about what we paid for crack sealing in the past. So someone else can come in and read that reserve study and it will help them in making future decisions. So they're not deciding to do something that's already been done for whatever reason. So it helps a lot with continuity when you have any kind of management change or any kind of board turnover.
I think that's a great point because a lot of times when we come back to a community, I mean, some communities don't do it as frequently. So even a 5-year delay in updating the study, you come back and management's changed, the board's changed. And you're like, oh, that roof looks newer. When was that replaced? It was done a few years ago. Nobody knows when, nobody knows who did it, nobody knows how much was paid. That information gets lost so quickly. So if you're staying on top of the study, we're able to document these things and keep a record for you.
And this stuff is all on a giant Excel spreadsheet, right?
Not a giant Excel spreadsheet, no, we do a yearly Excel spreadsheet.
Well, okay.
Yeah, so it's not, we don't keep it going year to year, we create a new one each year.
Each year, okay. And then if I remember right, I think in January, we got kind of like okay, these are all the things according to reserves that we'll have to deal with this year. And I do remember.
And what our recommendations.
And what our recommendations are. And I do remember in the past, for instance, we made a decision to delay painting building 15 a year because it helped out with other activities that were going on and it really didn't need it.
Yeah, what's actually presented to the board is, at the beginning of every year, we present everything that was scheduled for in 2018. So in the next board meeting, what was scheduled for in 2018 and what was actually done, what was budgeted for in the reserve and what was spent. Because typically, DJ will reserve not knowing anything as far as he only knows the extended, he only knows the life, he only knows what the expected cost is. He can't take into account the developer relationship, the community relationship, the ability to do multiple things and have a discount. So we'll provide with this is what the reserve study told us to spend. We did all of them, but we only spent this or we went over. If we went over, we let DJ know. If we went under, we let the board know, hey, we were able to save $20,000 on top of what was anticipated because we did X, Y, and Z to make it happen. And now here's what we need to do for 2019. Here's what's recommended, and here's what we would tell you to do with that.
The reserve study and the component list on Toscana's website at all?
It is, the newest one is not, because DJ just got it to me and we do have some changes that need to be made. So the newest one will not go on until the board sees it, but the one that the board has reviewed and is available is on the website, under the resources.
So that's the extent of just this part of the presentation. I do want to point out, if anybody's interested in learning more about reserves, our website is a great resource. We have a learning center with lots of articles, frequently asked questions. We have a section of webinars. You can sign up and watch a live webinar, or we have recordings of past webinars that cover a lot of different topics related to reserves. Some are co-hosted with attorneys that talk about insurance issues and reserves and board member liability issues and insurance people, just a lot of different options to look at. Reserve basics like this to going into more advanced, so you can watch them at your leisure. So at this point, we'll open it up to questions. I don't know if I should just start with the questions you sent me, or...
I would go over a little bit of what was sent, because I guarantee you there's some people in this room have a similar thought process on those questions.
All right, so there's multi-parts to the questions, so I'll try to take it into pieces. So first, please explain why the goal is to be 100% of the fully funded reserve. My understanding is that the fully funded reserve is calculated by taking the current cost of each item, multiplying by the effective age, and then dividing by its useful life. That's correct. Then, if an item is halfway through its useful life, its costs count 50% toward being fully funded. This results in a recommendation has 50% of the replacement cost available halfway through an item's useful life. This is not reality, so why is this a prudent practice? Why shouldn't you use a cash flow analysis based on expected life and costs, and then add a safety factor in case assumptions are incorrect? So for that first part, the reserve setting and funding is all about managing risk. When an association is 100% funded, it is offsetting depreciation completely, right? That example, the $10,000 expense over 10 years, you're theoretically saving $1,000 per year toward that, and at the end of 10 years, you have your $10,000. So I don't see why that's an incorrect way to save yourself. Being 100% funded is a conservative plan, and it does provide more margin, like talking about the safety factor. Yeah, you're not going to replace all your assets at the same time. And being 100% funded does not mean you have a low replacement value. Hopefully, through the illustrations and the discussion, you realize being 100% funded is just having the amount you should have at a point in time based on the ages and costs of your assets. So if you are 100% funded, it does provide that safety. Because if something fails sooner, you're going to have that funding available to be able to go in and replace it sooner. Now, it may throw your funding plan off its trajectory, and we need to refactor it, but you're not going to be in financial distress mode. And the study is cash flow analysis based on the expected life and replacement cost of the assets. Second part.
DJ, I don't think you mentioned, but maybe you did, that all the money's in one big bucket. So if something fails earlier than expected, it's not like everything is allotted to that particular thing in the account. So if something fails earlier than 2 years earlier than it's supposed to, you have the money to fix it. Then you just need to adjust it for the next year. So does that make sense? It's not like you have 52 million little accounts with, $2,000 saved for your $10,000 item. You have one giant account. I'm not sure if that was clear.
Yeah, I can touch on that, and that is a great point, because I do find a lot of communities or board members feel, well, reserve study says, we have 3 more years left on this, so technically we only have $10,000 for this component now. We can't spend the $15,000 needed because it's failed sooner. We just haven't had enough time. But that's a great point. We're looking at the pool of money available to everything. So if something does fail sooner, you do have the money to do it. You don't have that money specifically tied to every component, and you can't spend more than what's allocated toward it. An example that was brought up is replacing the gates. I mean, technically, some of the gates were replaced prematurely, right? Does that mean you don't have the money to do it? You did. You got a good deal for it too. So that's issues you have to look at and not tie yourself to, we only have X number of dollars for this one component. We talked about, before some of you were here, that some of the gate equipment is going to be allocated to this other property, but it's still in the Toscana reserve study. So we need to take those out, but that doesn't mean we remove the money that's kind of allocated to it. That money just stays in the pool of funds to the reserves. And what's going to happen is the fully funded balance will decrease a little bit by removing those assets, and your reserve balance should stay the same. So your percent funded will increase a little bit. Maybe it goes from 53 to 55. It shouldn't be a significant change.
And so it makes sense, like what he's saying is, so if something fails, like Barry made a good point, like the painting of building 15, that was a strategic move, but it wasn't done in the example that I'm giving. But let's say something breaks. Well, we're gonna fix the thing that's broken, and if painting waits a year, so what, painting waits a year? That's the thought process behind how it's actually funded.
And another example is when you are replacing something, it's a great opportunity to improve. Get better technology, better materials, better quality. In the reserve study, we're typically budgeting like for like. So we can't anticipate what the future board is going to want to do in terms of replacing the floor with something higher end and spend more money. Let's say we're allocating X number of dollars to do this floor, and you go out and getting bids and you want to do something nicer. That doesn't mean you're limited to spending only what's budgeted, right? You can spend more money, as long as the board agrees and everyone thinks it's reasonable and this is appealing to the community. You can spend more money, and that's where having having a strong reserve fund is beneficial because again, you have that margin to incur the added expense that wasn't accounted for.
So, so I understand the example of we replaced the carpet, we didn't need to replace it everywhere, but we got a better deal. Who makes that call? Is that the board? Okay.
Which is currently declaring control.
What is the communication? The slide before this, you were talking about, you have the, if you will, history of the line item.
Right.
I call it that. What's the communication, for example, Nicole Space elevator? If she replaces an elevator, does she make that entry into that line, or she communicates that to him?
It's gotta come
Could
to
you
me.
explain that quickly, the flow of
Right.
that information?
So that's part of the update process. Really, this information is gonna stay the way it is until it's updated again.
Right.
So whether that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then when we go through that process, Nicole's gonna send me a list of all the projects that were done. So let's say 2019, here's what we did, 2020, and then I'll go through and I enter that information in here, I adjust the lifespan based on when it was replaced and when the new study started, so maybe the asset's gonna be 2 years old. So I make those adjustments, that's part of the update process.
Okay, so she, Nicole, or local, whoever did management, initiates that for you.
Yeah.
And typically, that's how associations decide they're doing an update. It's been 5 years and there's inflation, there's whatever, and we haven't updated. Or, hey, as Toscana, we just spent $2 million updating some major components. I'd like to see a new reserve study that reflects a new balance.
So what's the frequency that, right now, today, you said, that you notify DJ of that?
Well, we've done an update every year that I've been here. We only do it when we ask him to do an update. I don't just email him every
So,
month.
but you have a, if you will, a file, electronic file with all the information,
Yeah.
and then you just send it in.
So the finance committee, I believe, could actually ask for a copy of that before it goes there, or just so you know.
Or just an update.
It's communicated also at board meetings, so
It's
if
us.
we disappeared tomorrow, poof, you would have document, it'd be harder to find, but you would be able to find it easily, you know, with looking at your board meeting notes and that sort of thing. It's all
And it's the
transparent.
biggest part of our annual meeting every year is all of the projects that have been done in the past year. It's 15, 20 minutes of our,
Some of those ran into reserve funds, some not, but
right, but I'm saying that's like the biggest component of our annual meeting is, these are the big ticket items you did this year. Len?
Yeah, what percent of the HOA fees get allocated to the reserve fund?
Well, let's get specific ones for DJ and then I'll go over the financial stuff. That way we can let DJ go. But I do have, Len,
Okay, what is the impact of Lux and the reserves?
we'll have that conversation after DJ. Yeah, let's do DJ specific ones so DJ can go on to his next thing. But I'm prepared for that kind of stuff.
Okay, you go.
Sandy?
I just wanted to say, I mean, it's probably obvious to everybody, but on balance, we talked quite a bit about having the ability to repair or replace something early if it's necessary and what the consequences on the big pot of money is in the reserve fund. But on balance, it also happens that things that are scheduled to be replaced in 10 years still are working effectively. And though therefore the replacement is postponed 2 or 3 years or whatever, and that has an offsetting effect on the balance as well, right? So
Correct.
we've got all that.
And that's part of the update process. If there's something that was scheduled to be replaced, they say, no, it wasn't done, and we've had it looked at, and it's good for another couple of years, then we might increase the overall useful life and the remaining life, or just the remaining life if we think the useful life is still a reasonable estimate. So those are some of the adjustments we make as well. Or when I come back out here, I might look at things and go, yeah, this is holding up pretty well. And I think it's gonna last longer than we were originally projecting. So those are some things we look at and the adjustments we make.
It's another good reason to have a preventative maintenance program in place with your maintenance team for things that have a long lifespan, like, you know, air conditioning units or something.
That's one criteria, but if it's more maintenance and if it's annual, and there's other criteria to it, but then it can still be part of the operating. All right, so the next question was, a common complaint about fully funded reserve goes something like, why should the current owners fund something that will take place years from now? I'm not likely to still be living here at that time, which means I'm paying for something that I get no value. Please respond to this. So this is a common misconception, and it's incorrect thinking. Honestly, current owners, you live here now, you're paying for your use of the facilities and the amenities and everything now. You're paying your fair share of the ongoing deterioration. Now, the actual check for a replacement may not occur until sometime in the future, but you're paying your share. So the deterioration expense is a real expense. You're not paying for the benefit of some future owners. Like the roof, for example. You're using and benefiting from this roof right now, and you're paying your share of that annual, monthly, daily deterioration, right? You're not, when that roof is replaced, it's not necessarily just benefiting that future ownership.
Another way to also look at it is your